Howdy doody, boys and girls. It's your old Buddhist pal Brad. How you doing? The other day, Vince Horn of the Buddhist Geeks put up this tweet that said, "The breakthrough phase is a phase in which everything in your practice starts to click and come together." Now, I don't really enjoy constantly shitting on Vince Horn, because when Buddhist Geeks first started, I was kind of excited by the idea. I knew some people who were involved in the first iteration of Buddhist Geeks. They used to come to my retreats in Shizuoka, Japan, and I thought, oh, this is cool. And the fact that they kind of stole the name from something I used to say by calling people geeky Buddhists, I thought, well, that's kind of neat. They took the name from me. And this weird turn they went into drugs and things, just that's what really bugs me. And I wrote about it, and you probably might have seen the Tricycle article that was semi-inspired by this. I'll put a link to that below. But I want to talk about this idea of the breakthrough phase, because when you click through that Twitter post, you get to a video in which Vince is telling you all about the breakthrough phase. And I kind of feel bad putting down this video because it's been several days and it's only got 2 views, and I feel I'm not pointing that out to gloat or anything, but I'm actually feel bad about it. But the fact that it only has 2 views doesn't really mean that much, because I think this is a very widespread idea. I see it all the time in Buddhism, this idea that there is a breakthrough phase, and that the point of the whole exercise of Buddhism is the breakthrough phase. And when one of the ways this became very clearly manifest for me was in my book Hardcore Zen. The original version of Hardcore Zen had if you've read the book, you'll have to have read the book to understand what I'm about to say, so forgive me for people who haven't read the book. But there's a thing I describe at this big moment I had when I was walking across a bridge on my way to work and had this kind of like, wah moment. The original version placed that about 2/3 of the way through the book, and then continued on with a lot of other stuff after that. What the editor of that book did was place that in a certain point where it feels like the climax of the book, like it's act 3 in film. You have the 3-act structure, and act 3 is when the big confrontation happens between the evil guy and the good guy. If you watch films these days, everything is so formulaic, it always happens in exactly the same way. So he constructed the book so that my big climax with reality happens right there, and forms like the bang moment, and then there's a little bit of a denouement after that. That wasn't the way I intended the book to read, and I eventually became comfortable with the way the book is constructed now, but that part still bothers me a lot, because it places way too much emphasis on this breakthrough moment, which is why a few books later, in There Is No God and He Is Always With You, I tried to come at that scene again in a different way and see if I could, repair the damage that had been done. But be that as it may, going through the Vince Horn video can tell us a few interesting things about this idea of the breakthrough phase. He says it's the time when your practice begins to click and come together. Now, okay, fine. You start finding answers, he says. You first had questions, and now you're starting to find answers, like the answers to what that beeping sound is. It's actually the garbage man. Sorry, I can't get rid of that stuff. You find answers to your deep questions of life. The signs of this, he says, are a feeling of joy, clarity of thinking, ease in social interaction, effortlessness in meditation. A host of interesting and strange energetic experiences in the body. That's one to remember. Mind-blowing peak experiences that totally shift our perception. And this is one of the most important experiences of our whole life. He also says, because he can't resist being irresponsible in even this little 1.5-minute video, he says that this can sometimes be triggered by experimenting with psychoactive drugs. Yeah. And then he says, the downside of this is that it comes to an end. What goes up must come down, what expands must contract. And so we enter disillusionment. And this is part of a series of videos that I think are intended to draw people in and make them pay him a consulting fee for consulting with them, probably via Skype, about their meditation practice. So there's another video that follows with the disillusionment phase, and there's a few videos that precede that with the other phases and stuff. But this idea of that there's this breakthrough phase is kind of pervasive, as I said. One of the things I remember hearing from Tim McCarthy, my first Zen teacher, is he told me about a conversation with Kobun Chino, his teacher, whose book is right back there. And Kobun Chino was asked by Tim or somebody, I don't know, what is the most difficult time to work with a student? And Kobun Chino answers, right after they had their first enlightenment experience. And these experiences, they do happen, these breakthrough experiences. And what generally happens is we, and by we I mean I included, make way too much of them. They become kind of like an anchor weight that holds us to this moment. So even though, as Vince Horn rightly reports, they can become some of the most important experiences of our lives, they also tend to hold us back. And my own experience of this was that I spent a lot of time after that bridge experience feeling kind of sorry for myself because it wasn't happening anymore. You know, it happened and it was like great. And at the moment it happened, there was this kind of interesting non-specialness about it. It didn't feel as if something new had happened. It felt like, oh, I finally saw what's been happening all along. That was the experience at that moment. But as I shifted out of it, I started to feel like, oh, that was special. How come I'm not there anymore? I want to get back there. I want to get back there. I want to get back there. And that becomes a problem because that can lead to all sorts of things. You can become very inflated about the fact that you've had this experience, or you can become kind of, it's almost like the way addicts are. When you get high and then you come down, you want to get high again, which may explain a little bit about what Vince is doing nowadays, because he probably got high on an experience and he wants to get that back, get it back, get it back, get it back, have it again, have it again, have it again, have it again. But what happens when you have these experiences again and again and again? Well, maybe our friend Gene Simmons of KISS can answer that. I don't know if any of you saw the famous Gene Simmons sex tape that came out, like 10 or more years ago. But it was really weird because I looked at it because I'm a KISS fanatic and I'm just like I'm pathetic, and I looked at this thing. And he's having what looks like the most uninteresting sex in the world. And he's got this model with him, and she looks like a model. She's like tall and well built and everything like that, and she's just kind of laying there as he's sort of getting over with it. It's like, it looks weird. And Gene Simmons is one of these guys who's kind of addicted to sex. I mean, he doesn't really use those words, but if you read his autobiography and things, you get this impression. And so probably sex was really great for him at one time, and then he just keeps having it over and over and over and over and over because he can, and it ends up getting to the point where it's nothing anymore. And that's what will happen to every experience you can possibly have, including unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. It'll just become a thing, and you'll just be like, oh, gotta have some magic mushrooms so I can have an enlightenment experience again. Bang! Yeah! It's not good for you. It's really not good for you. Your best bet is to, if you have an experience like that, let it go. It's nice, it can be informative, it can change your life. It certainly changed my life, okay? I'll admit that. But if I went around trying to have it again and again and again, including taking medicine that's intended to induce it to happen, it's not going to be, it's eventually going to be nothing. Eventually it's going to be the Gene Simmons sex tape. It's just going to be like, get it over with, chew some gum, go away. He's actually chewing gum while having sex. It's just weird to me. I don't get that. So the other thing that he talks about in this video that kind of worries me about him, or about people in general and their ideas about this, is, what does he say? Interesting and strange energetic experiences in the body. I'd watch out for that. Those things do happen during meditation sometimes, these weird, what they call energetic experiences in the body, and I've had them, and then probably everybody who meditates long enough has them. I tend to try to get over with them. When I start having a weird or interesting energetic experience in the body, my feeling is that that's probably not good. This and he also talks about joy and what else? Ease and joy and all this stuff. Bliss, is a word he doesn't use, but it's used often. I think bliss states are something you should maybe try to stay away from, because it's a bit like a roller coaster. It's like wee, 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 wee. And the bliss states feel good as they're happening, but they have a front side and a back side. So as you're experiencing the bliss, you're also experiencing simultaneously this back side that you're not noticing. And the weird thing about time is that time doesn't work the way we think it does. Time is weird. Maybe we'll do a whole video on that. But you'll be having the light side, and you're having the dark side simultaneously, but you're not noticing it. And then after a time, after the light side kind of finishes its business, there comes the dark side. And they're simultaneous, and they're paired, always paired. So knowing this as I do, whenever I start to enter a bit of bliss, I kind of go, okay, let's tone that down a little bit. And not feel that bliss, or start overwhelming joy starts to come up, and I'm kind of like, okay, and this comes from experience. This comes from having had it happen a few times and noticing how it works, and then going, maybe I don't want all that overwhelming joy, because I know what comes in a pair with it. So I try to kind of even it out, and the evened out part is interesting, because if I describe it as evened out, you might think, oh, that's just, I'd rather be joyous and then unhappy than just even all the time. But even all the time isn't actually a bad thing or a mediocre thing. It's actually the best thing, is to be evened out all the time, kind of even out the highs and lows, and you end up living a life that feels better most of the time. You don't have that. You're not struggling. You're not forcing the body into highs and then going down. You don't have that kind of stuff. So there you have it. I've rambled on a long time. Apologies to Vince for pooping on your video, and maybe you'll get more than 2 views after this. Who knows? Maybe people seek it out and look at it. So thanks for watching. My Patreon links are below. My PayPal links are below. That's how. There's a guy who fixes motorcycles who lives up the street, and then he fixes them and then he races them down the street. That's what you're hearing. But if you want to help me get new insulation so I don't have to hear motorcycles go by, send me some Patreon and PayPal money. That isn't what they go for. It goes for buying vegetarian sausages and things. Thanks a lot. See you later. Bye.